Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian from Izzet League EDH, and today we're coming back with the Commander Legends spoilers. Now I'm slightly behind on this. I'm trying to chug through these spoilers as fast as possible. They're lasting way longer than I expected. And I'm already behind, so I'm kind of seeing what I can do to kind of speed up, especially the videos as well. So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and jump right into the spoilers as well as get my thoughts. Just a quick reminder for any new viewers on the channel or for this spoiler season. I'm only going over the newest cards that are brand new to Magic to Commander. Any reprints I am not going to basically discuss unless it happens to be a card I just didn't know was a reprint, or unless it happens to be a notable reprint that I think is worth discussing. So that's the only thing I would like to mention real quick before we go into the video. So without further ado, there we go. All right, so we're going to start jumping in right into the multicolored cards. Okay, starting with Czar Renegade Recruiter. And I'm personally the most excited about this card because I'm actually thinking about making this as one of my new Izzet commanders. Just because there's just so much good stuff I can do with this. Not just with her ability, but just the deck archetype alone. So anyways, Czar Renegade Recruiter is a 5-drop Izzet commander for 3 generic, 1 red, and a blue. She's a legendary creature, human pirate, 4 power, 3 toughness, has flying, and she says, whenever Czar Renegade Recruiter attacks, look at the defending player's hand. You may put a creature card from it onto the battlefield under your control, tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. Return that creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So, I am really liking this card a lot just because of the fact that I can look at somebody's hand alone is already huge for free. That's basically the same as like a Gitaxian Probe ability, but on a stick. And I get to steal one of their creatures every turn. If I happen to steal a creature with an ETB effect, then I get the ETB effect. There's a lot of really cool jank you can do with this, on top of the fact that she herself has flying, so she's more naturally probably already gonna more likely hit the opponent more often too, so you don't have to worry about her dying upon combat. She's more likely to live because she has flying. So there's a lot of cool directions I could take with this. I'll probably make a separate video in regards to that, but for right now we'll just go ahead and move on to the next one. But just know I'm really excited about this one. This is probably the most likely commander I'm probably going to build around so far, aside from partner commanders. All right, so next up, we have Yurlok of Scorch Thrash. He is a Jund commander for 4 mana. He costs 1 generic, 1 black, 1 red, 1 green. He's a legendary creature, Viashino Shaman. Haven't seen a Viashino in quite a good amount of time. He has 4 power, 4 toughness. He has vigilance and says a player losing unspent mana causes that player to lose that much life, and you can pay 1 generic mana and tap him to give each player 1 black, 1 red, and 1 green mana floating. So essentially, this guy brings back mana burn, which I really think is cool. There's not a whole lot of mechanics that kind of do this sort of thing, or any mechanics as far as I'm aware that really do cards that do this sort of thing. So there's a lot of really interesting, I don't know, I feel like this is going to be a very interesting commander that you would kind of take in a different way from Jund. In a way, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the type of deck where you might even throw in some like cards that you would typically consider group hug in terms of mana, but actually ends up being a downside instead of an upside. I wouldn't be surprised about that, but at the very least, keep in mind, because it does give each player 3 mana, you would typically, at least the way I would think about it just upon my first impressions, I would use that on my turn. Okay, use 1 mana and tap them to get my 3 mana, then use it immediately to play another card. And then when I go to my next phase, because floating mana goes away at the end of phases, I don't know if it's steps too, but at least phases, via your luck over here will, instead of the mana just going away, will actually damage the opponents if they haven't spent that mana at instant speed somehow. So it really puts pressure on the opponent. It's a pretty cool card, and it's only 4 mana to drop too, so it's not difficult to bring out. So I think it's pretty cool for a junk card so far. Next up, we have Gore Moldrack and Phenologist. He is a 3-drop Simic commander for 1 generic, 1 green, 1 blue. He's a legendary creature, Human Scout, has 3 power, 2 toughness, and he says you and permanents you control have protection from salamanders. At the beginning of your end step, each player who controls the fewest creatures creates a 4/3 blue salamander warrior creature token. This is probably the most left field Simic commander I have ever seen so far. I feel like there's probably some jank you could easily do with this. I know there's some other cards in Commander's Legends that actually create salamanders and give the opponent salamanders in some way, shape, or form. So, which oddly enough works with this guy, obviously, because he has protection. Well, you and the permanents you control have protection from salamanders. It's just so bizarre. If there's some way, though, that you could potentially turn all creatures your opponent controls into salamanders, I would think that would make this card absolutely busted, because then you're just completely immune to all of your opponent's creatures. I think it has some weird potential. It's just a matter of whether or not there's enough support for it. That's the biggest thing, and I haven't looked into that yet. So next card, we have Amarath The Lustrous. He is a what is it called? Bant. He is a Bant commander. For 6 mana, he costs 3 generic, 1 green, 1 white, 1 blue. He's a legendary creature, dragon, 6 power, 6 toughness, has flying, and he says whenever another permanent you control, or no, my bad, whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it shares a card type with that permanent, you may reveal that card and put it into your hand. This isn't... I have mixed feelings about this card just because of the fact it's 6 mana, really. That's kind of the biggest thing. It's just the fact it's 6 mana. It's a 6 mana flyer with 6/6, which is pretty decent already. Well, actually, with the state that Commander is in right now and how fast the format's going, this is... just those stats alone is a little underwhelming in my opinion. The ability is pretty cool. It basically provides some like sort of a top deck manipulation type of synergy. So like with Sensei's Divining Type, for example, you play something, Amarath's ability will trigger while Amarath's ability is on a stack. You can go ahead and manipulate the top cards of your library to put something of the same card type as the one you played, and then you can add that to your hand. So I'm curious to see where this will go. I have a feeling it's not going to get played very often, though, just because it costs 6 mana to play. But I could be wrong. You do have green in there, and white, so we'll see. Remains to be seen. All right, so next up, that's it for the multicolors. We'll go into the colorless cards. We have Horizon Stone. This is a very interesting card. Well, let me read it first. Horizon Stone's a 5 mana colorless artifact, and it says if you would lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colorless instead. So basically, in a nutshell, you get a Crewfix effect, the god Crewfix, the card, I forgot the rest of his name, but you get a Crewfix effect where essentially instead of your mana going away at the end of phases, it just turns into colorless mana instead, and it just sticks around for you to use later on, maybe on future turns too, if you really wanted to. I think that's probably the coolest card about this card. This is one of those cards that I feel like could possibly become a pseudo staple for commander decks. Obviously, it's going to have way more synergy for decks that create tons of mana, like Simic decks, as if Simic needs like another piece to work with. Definitely helps Crewfix decks, of course, too, because then if something happens to happen to Crewfix himself, Horizon Stone's at least there as a backup plan to make sure the mana still sticks around. So, pretty cool card. Remains to be seen how broken this will be. It definitely has the potential there, but it's kind of one of those things that depends on how popular it gets that determines how broken within the community's eyes it will be, if that makes sense. So anyways, that's it for the colorless cards. We'll go into the green cards next. All right, let me swap this. Green, there we go. All right, so first up, we have Natural Reclamation. It's a 5-drop green instant card for 4 generic and 1 green. It has Cascade, and it destroys target artifact or enchantment. Pretty interesting. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this, because casting 5 mana to just destroy an artifact or enchantment, that feels real bad. But because it has the Cascade, it might not be too bad. The only thing I would have to say about this is that I personally would only put this in a deck that has mostly like permanents in the deck, or at least a bunch of cards in the deck, or mostly cards in the deck that, should they get activated immediately, you know you will get some value. So obviously cascading into like a counter spell wouldn't really feel that great, especially if it ends up being something like Swung Song. That's just 1 mana. That would feel real bad, because then you can't resolve the Swung Song, so it just goes on the bottom of your deck, and you just wasted 5 mana just to destroy an artifact or enchantment, which could have been done with just maybe 2 mana with, like, what's it called, Naturalize or something instead. So I feel like it's not a bad card, but you should only really use it in specific types of decks, if that makes sense. All right, next up we have Numa, Draga Chieftain. She is a mono green legendary commander for 3 mana. She costs 2 generic and 1 green. She's a legendary creature elf warrior, 2 power, 2 toughness. She has partner, and she says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay XX. When you do distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target elves. So it's basically another elves piece. We already have a ton of elves commanders and elf tribal decks already in the format. I'm not particularly keen on this card, to be honest. The only thing that I think that makes this kind of better than maybe other already existing elf commanders is the fact that it has partners, meaning that you can actually give it some sort of other color that maybe an elf deck would typically not have, for example. So maybe if you wanted to, you could, what color has the least amount of elves? Blue? You can make a Simic elf deck if you wanted to. So I don't know. I'm not too impressed by the card. So next up we have Kamals Will. This one's actually not too bad. It's okay. It's decent. It's a 4-drop mono green instant. Costs 3 generic and 1 green. It says choose one of the 2 modes. If you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both modes. First mode says until end of turn, any number of target lands you control become a 1/1 elemental creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. The second mode says choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control deals damage equal to its power to that creature. So essentially, you would obviously want to cast this, assuming you have your commander already on the field. In which case, then what you would use both modes, turn most of your lands, if not all of them, into creatures. They're indestructible, so you don't have to worry about them getting blown up. And they're still lands, but they become creatures. And then because of the second mode, choose target creature don't control. Each creature you control deals damage equal to its power to that creature. So let's just say you have 6 lands on the field when you activate Kamals Will with your commander on the field. Okay, all your lands become creatures, so now you have at least 7 creatures on the field, 6 of them being lands, 1 at least being your commander. Not assuming you happen to have any more creatures on the field too. You'll at least be doing 7 damage with Kamals Will to another creature. Hopefully one of your opponents. Which is honestly not too bad. Like, this is actually not a bad card. If you use this with your commander in the field, it's actually a pretty solid card. If you don't have your commander on the field, though, it then becomes not as good, and just completely depends on what type of deck synergy you're trying to go for here. Are you trying to go for the removal that the second mode provides, or do you have some sort of land combo or something that you can use the first mode in? So it becomes a little bit more niche when you use the modes separately, but when you use them both together, it can go in a lot of decks. All right, next up, the last green card for the day, we have Kamals Hart of Krosa. He is an 8-drop mono green commander. He costs 6 generic, a green, and a green. He's a legendary creature, human druid. He's 5 power, 5 toughness. He has partner, and he says at the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. He has an activated ability that costs 1 generic and a green. It says until end of turn, target land you control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. It's still a land. Personally, I'm not really sure when you would want to use that activated ability. That's kind of weird for me. Or actually, no, that makes sense. That makes sense now, because you turn your land into an indestructible creature, 1/1 indestructible creature with vigilance and still land. At the beginning of combat, Kamal's passive ability will give it +3/+3 and trample, so it becomes a 4/4 with trample, and it goes swing. So Kamal is basically just a go big type commander. But the biggest thing is he has partner too, so quite easily you can partner up with another commander, another partner commander from different colors, so that way hopefully a cheaper costing commander, so that way at least in the early game you can play the cheaper costing commander, and then once you get to enough mana to play Kamal, and hopefully enough creatures too, you can play Kamal, you get a pseudo Crater Hoof Behemoth effect, and you can just kind of hopefully go for the kill, or at least get close to the kill if possible. So not a bad card if you partner him with the right type of partner, in my opinion. All right, next up we will go on to the white cards for today. Let me just quickly swap these out. There we go. White cards. We have Prava of the Steel Legion. He has a mono white, also partner commander for 2 generic and 1 white. Has 1 power, 4 toughness, has partner, and says as long as it's your turn, creature tokens you control get +1/+4. It has an activated ability that costs 3 generic and a white, so 4 mana total. And it says create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. To be honest, I'm not particularly sure how you would want to build this deck. It's kind of cool that your creature tokens get +1/+4, because then if you just go like a go wide strategy that white can very, very easily do with 1/1 tokens, you'll have a bunch of 2/5s on the field. But it's like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like this is one of those cards that is more meant as a supporting card for a deck strategy, but is not actually meant to be like a main strategy, if that makes sense. It's just there to help out the deck, but not necessarily be the deck, if that makes sense. Okay. If it has partner, so I'd be willing to bet that any other partner commander that this card partners up with will be more of the main focus for the deck, or it could be one of those decks where it's kind of like a commanderless deck, where it's just you have both commanders there, kind of there for colors. The deck doesn't really need to play the partner commanders, but they're there to help out, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I don't think it's that great, but I can very easily be wrong. So anyways, next up, for white cards, how many white cards we have? That was it for the white cards. So we have the blue cards. We're almost done with today's cards for today. For now we're on blue, and I absolutely love this card. This is part of a new cycle that is being introduced in Commander Legends, and I absolutely love this cycle. So first off, we're starting off with Court of Cunning. It is a mono blue enchantment for 3 mana, costs 1 generic and 2 blue. It says when Court of Cunning enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. Immediately, instantly, just the fact you become the monarch for 3 mana alone, without reading the rest of his ability or of its abilities so far, already makes it really good in my mind. Okay. Now, it also has an added ability that says at the beginning of your upkeep, any number of target players each mill 2 cards. Okay. So you become the Monarch and everybody mills. Okay, all right, that's pretty good for 3 mana. But it also says if you're the Monarch, each of those players mills 10 cards instead. I find this card's absolutely gross in my opinion. Now, one thing I do want to point out real quick is is because of the fact that the Monarch lets you draw a card at the end of your turn. But the ability does say at the beginning of your upkeep is when the mill trigger happens. So you do have to survive a turn of still being the Monarch in order to get that upkeep trigger. But if you do, you get a big payoff. I'm absolutely in love with this deck personally, just because I just built a Bruvac deck, which says opponents mill double of what they would normally mill. So if I happen to have Quarter Cunning on my side of the field, and I'm still the Monarch at my upkeep, instead of milling 10 cards, they mill 20 cards instead. And that's on turn like 3, 4. Like, to me, that's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. And it's everybody. All my opponents mill that much. I just think that's insane. That's so good. So good. This is going to be fantastic for any sort of mill builds out there. All right, next blue card, we have Amphin Mutinier. He has a mono blue creature, 4-drop. He costs 3 generic and 1 blue. He's a salamander pirate creature, has 3 power, 3 toughness, and he says when Amphin Mutineer enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-salamander creature. That creature's controller creates a 4/3 blue salamander warrior creature token. He has Encore for 6 mana, so 4 generic and 2 blue. Just as a reminder for any of you who might not be familiar, Encore is a new mechanic that Commander's Legends is bringing to the format, which essentially says that you exile the card from the graveyard with Encore. You create a token of the Encored creature for each opponent that you have. It attacks that turn against one of each of them, and then at the end of the turn, you sacrifice them. So most of the Encore effects that I've seen so far usually are on a creature that either has some sort of attack trigger or has some sort of ETB trigger, because Encore will trigger one of either of them. So in this case, I think this is one of those cards I was talking about that would really work well with that what's his face? The salamander guy, if I can find him. This guy, the Gore Moldrack, would work really well with him because obviously it creates a lot of salamanders, especially if you Encore. So could go along that type of deck. Again, I don't know how much support there is for Gore Moldrack, but it could be one of those cards you could put in there. All right, so that's it for the blue cards. Last but not least, we have the red cards left for today. Let's go ahead and put them up. So first up, we have Port Razor. He's a 5-drop mono red orc pirate for 3 generic and 2 red. He has 4 power and 4 toughness, and he says whenever Port Razor deals combat damage to a player, untap each creature you control. After this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. Port Razor can't attack a player it has already attacked this turn. So those are mono red, or not even mono red, red cards. Those are already a good amount of red cards in Magic's history that have provided additional combat steps. And quite a few of them have ways to give a bunch of combat steps, if not infinite combo steps, if you combo with some other cards. So this is just kind of added onto that list. There's one main key distinction about this card, though, is that because they know that the fact there are infinite combat step combos out there, that is specifically why they added that last line of Port Razor's ability that says can't attack a player it has already attacked this turn. So at most, you're only allowed to attack with Port Razor 3 times, assuming you are playing in a 4-pod, 4-player game. So you can't abuse it nearly as much. There's still ways to abuse it. It's just way more difficult. The only way you could actually make it an infinite combo somehow, like combat step combo, is if you, after the 3rd attack, you find a way to flicker him. So that way he considered a new, and give him haste at the same time. So that way he's considered a new card on the field, and thus he can actually repeat the combat steps again. And then after another 3 attacks, you flicker him and give him haste. So it would have to be something like that. But you would have to have a way to flicker him and give him haste immediately, and be able to do so in a way infinitely. That's a lot of hoops to go through. But if you happen to pull it off, that would be the only way you could actually make it work. All right, next up we have Meteoric Mace. It's a mono red equipment artifact. We don't see many of those. It costs 6 mana, so 4 generic and 2 red. It says equipped creature gets +4/+0 and has trample, has equip for 4 mana, and has cascade. So again, it's one of those cards similar to the green card that blows up artifacts and equipments. Artifacts and enchantments, where it's like, realistically, it's not the type of card I would typically put in the deck, just because of the fact that the ability itself is very bare bones. The only thing that makes it kind of worthwhile is the cascade. But because the cascade is so potentially random for your deck as to what you would get, your chances are you're most likely not going to actually be getting a whole lot of value with this card, just because it costs way too much to play. That is it, really. Granted, of course, like I mentioned before, it kind of just depends on your deck and how the deck is built. But for the most part, it feels like you're losing more. You're more likely to lose more than you will to win more, if that makes sense. So that's my take on that. So last but not least, we're on to the last card for the day, which is Kedis Emberclaw Familiar. I'm actually really excited about this card. I'm potentially thinking about putting it in as partner commander. At the very least, I'm definitely putting it in some of my decks. But he is a mono red partner commander. He costs 2 mana, so 1 generic and 1 red. He's a legendary creature, Elemental Lizard. He has 1 power, 1 toughness, and partner. And it says whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. Right away, this is an absolutely potentially busted card. Because keep in mind, you don't have to have this as a partner in order to have your deck. You can have this in the 99 of a deck too. So if you're playing a very aggressive or combat-oriented type deck, whether it be maybe a Voltron deck, for instance, or maybe you're going with a go big, go tall creature deck, like a Gruul deck or something, Kedis has potential. Wow, one partner combination that I'm potentially considering making a deck with this is if you have Kedis as one partner, and then you have Ishtai as the other partner commander. In case you're not familiar, Ishtai is a 4 mana. I forgot the name of it. It's a 4 mana white blue card that has flying, has a 1/1 creature, and it says whenever an opponent casts a spell, Ishtai gets a 1/1 counter. So essentially, whenever an opponent casts a spell, Ishtai gets bigger. All right, you're going to already have Kedis on the field because he's a 2-drop, and by turn 5, Ishtai can probably swing in at somebody for maybe 7 damage or something because he has flying, so he's most likely going to connect. And once he connects, because he did 7 damage to an opponent, Kedis triggers and does 7 damage to your other opponents as well. So pretty cool, nifty strategy right there. Basically make a Jeskai like Flyers deck or something, and you can just run rampant. And I don't know, I think it's really cool. I feel like he's potentially going to fly under the radar for most people, but has the potential to be a very busted card. So keep an eye out for Kedis. So other than that, that's pretty much it for today, guys, in terms of today's spoilers. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below what you are looking forward to in terms of the cards that come out today as well. Maybe give out in the comment section some kind of ideas for some sort of combos or synergies that you could probably use with some of these cards. But Other than that, if you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. It's the best way I know when I upload more episodes such as this one. My name is Brian from Izzet League EDH, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace, y'all.